Hello, Arc Junkies, and happy Halloween. Welcome to episode 249. Man, October has been one hell of a month. I typically don't do a whole lot of traveling, or at least I try not to do a whole lot of traveling in a single month. But this month, there's just been a lot going on. As many of y'all know, I went up to Cleveland, Ohio for a couple days to cover the World Skills Welding competition at Lincoln Electric. That was a really cool event. The competitors, man, they weld like freaking robots. It's insane the level of precision that they have when it comes to welding. So, it was a really cool experience to go watch that. And congratulations to everybody that participated, especially to the winners. Jordan Packer represented the United States this year, and he took home a bronze medal, which is no easy feat. So, congratulations to him. He did a kick ass job. It was just really cool to go up there and see this whole thing take place and how these people train for these events and the different opportunities that it affords them. It was really cool experience to go up there and check all that out. I had a blast. I've never been to a skills competition. Well, I've never been to a world skills competition. So seeing how that whole event was ran, it was pretty cool. I had a really good time. Right after Cleveland, I headed out to I headed back home for a day, and then I ended up back in Dallas, Georgia, the following day for the Excel Mentoring Welding Competition. That was pretty cool as well. The competitors had to build a themed barbecue grill, and they were judged based off creativity, weld quality, functionality, workmanship, and the structural integrity. And they still had to stay in the predetermined size range of about 3 foot tall, 2 foot long, and 2 foot wide. And these students built some really cool pieces, and it made the judging really difficult. So I was honored to go up there, be a part of that whole deal. Thanks to Excel for having me up there as a judge for the second year in a row. I'm planning on going back next year again. It's just a really cool event, and it's really awesome to see the community come together, the different welding instructors that come together that push these students to build something for the competition, show up on a Saturday, and be a little bit different than their counterparts that are in class. Not everybody shows up, not everybody puts in that extra effort, but you can tell the folks that are there, they're the ones that are truly passionate and want to make welding a career. So it was really cool to see that, meet up with all the students, and chat with some of the instructors, and the different people that came from all over to participate in this competition. Right after that, I headed back home just to jump on a plane and head out to the Houston, Texas area for the ASME 9 Code Clinic that was put on by the American Welding Society and instructed by Walt Spurko. Walt is he's like a walking code book. The man is super knowledgeable when it comes to ASME 9. And if you were considering taking a class on ASME 9, I would say wait until you can get Walt Spurko as your instructor. Like I said, super knowledgeable guy, very passionate about what he does. Been in this industry for a while. He's like he's a ASME Section 9 guru. So if you're looking at taking that class, wait till Walt is the instructor. Everybody speaks very highly of him, and after taking his class, I fully understand why. After the class, I headed back to Orlando. So I'll be at home this week, kind of just gearing up and preparing for FabTech, getting some episodes out and everything. So, I got steady content coming out while I'll be up in Atlanta, Georgia for FabTech this year. FabTech should be an awesome event. I know last year, FabTech 2021, when it was up in Chicago, a lot of people didn't show up. Like a lot of the vendors and stuff, like the big names, they weren't there because they decided early on in the year, hey, we're not going to go ahead and participate in any expos or any shows or anything like that. But now everything's back to normal. So 2022 should be a fantastic year for FabTech up in Atlanta, Georgia. And if you're going to FabTech, I wanted to let you know about a couple of events that I'll be involved with. Starting Tuesday evening, I'll be at the biggest collaborative meetup taking place in 2022 at the Hard Rock Cafe Velvet Underground, featuring some of the folks from Weldporn, Blue Demon, Outlaw Leather, Rugged Charms, Weld Metals Online. Fronius is going to be there, Flametech Scorpion, Stephanie Hoffman with Underground Metalworks, Max Schur with Up and Smoke Welding Apparel, and myself. It's going to be a great event. Be sure to stop by. It's going to start around 7 p.m., and we'll have food, drinks, a great atmosphere. The first 200 people that come through the door, if you're old enough, you'll get 2 free drink tickets, and we have commemorative tumblers for everybody that attends. I think there's like 1,000 tumblers, so if you're one of the first 1,000 people to come through the door, you're going to get a commemorative tumbler. And then on Wednesday At 11 a.m., I'm monitoring a CWI panel in Hall A. So if you've ever wanted to ask questions about becoming a CWI, what type of work they do, the pathway to become a CWI, the work that's involved, whether or not it's worth obtaining yours or not, swing by that panel discussion. And then at 3 o'clock on the same day, I'm going to be doing a meet and greet at the AWS booth with Stephanie Hoffman, Ray Ripple, Chloe Hudson, and Dabs Wellington till about 4 o'clock. And then right after that, we're going to head on over to the Arcs and Ales event taking place at 6 p.m. at the New Realm Brewing Company. Can't wait to see y'all there. It's going to be an epic time. In this week's episode, I'm chatting with Chandler Vincent, owner of Welder Made Welding Kits and past World Skills Medalist. I had a chance to sit down and chat with Chandler while I was up at Lincoln for the World Skills competition and learn a little bit more about what it takes to compete at this level. We're going to get right into this episode after a quick word from the supporters who keep this show up and running. Today's episode of the Arc Junkies Podcast is brought to you by Rockmount Research and Alloys, helping you weld stronger so your repairs last longer. I've spoken extensively about the different electrodes from Rockmount when it comes to stick welding, but I also want to let y'all know they make some pretty cool TIG wires as well, one of which is specifically designed for cast iron and cast steel. The Jupiter TIG B filler wire is especially suited for use on cast iron parts or for joining cast iron to steel. Deposits are strong, dense, and fully machinable. Unlike other rods meant for cast alloys, Jupiter B doesn't require any special techniques to apply it. Jupiter B TIG works great for repairing critical cast iron components such as valves, pumps, blocks, or machine housings, and yields high-quality welds at 60,000 pounds of tensile strength with minimum time and effort. Check out Jupiter TIG B today at rockmountwelding.com, and while you're there, you can save 10% off your order when you pick up some of their abrasives, burrs, and bits when you use Arc Junkies 10 at checkout. Get the job done right the first time, every time with Rockmount. We're also brought to you by Outlaw Leather. Custom welding hoods make the perfect gift for that holiday season. Whether it's for you or someone else in your life, get that perfect custom leather hood before the holiday rush hits. If you're planning on getting a hood for yourself or someone else this holiday season, today is the day to place your order. To ensure that your custom leather hood arrives by Christmas, orders must be received no later than November 29th. And if you're waiting on a sale, you won't have to wait much longer. Outlaw's going to be selling $100 hoods come Black Friday, so be sure to set your alarm because you don't want to miss this amazing deal. In the meantime, you can shop outlawleather.com and get 15% off all their in-stock handmade leather goods like bolt bags, hoods, scabbards, and more when you use Arc Junkies in the discount box at checkout. And if you're local to the Pasadena, Texas area, be sure to swing in their showroom and check out all the tools, apparels, and hoods, and more. Tell them the Arc Junkies sent you. All right, you know what time it is. Fire up your machine, drop your hood, and turn me up 5.
You're listening to the Arc Junkies Podcast, helping you make every weld better than your last with each episode. And now your host, Jason Becker.
All right, Chandler, welcome back. It's great to meet you in person.
Yeah, man. How long ago was it we did this podcast together?
Probably, I would say a little over maybe a year ago.
Yeah, it's kind of just barely getting out of the COVID season, seemed like.
Yeah.
It was a Zoom meeting.
Yeah, most of them are conducted via Zoom. So we're up here at the World Skills.
World Skills. Yeah.
World Skills special event.
Yep.
Because I guess it got canceled. They were originally going to do it in Shanghai, China.
Yep. So World Skills is a lot like the Olympics. They had Shanghai had the contract for 2022, and because of COVID restrictions, I don't really know what went on there, but it unfortunately got canceled probably about 6 months before the competition. And a lot of these countries, well, most of them have years and years of time, money, and training spent getting ready for these competitions. And so it was heartbreaking for all the countries and the competitors. And with all the struggles with COVID and everything, Lincoln has stepped up big time and offered to host the World Skills competition, which turned into the special edition of 2022, which I'd have to say is an amazing feat in itself, right? So I want to say it was, and what month was it? About 3 months ago, we heard that it might be a possibility. And at that time, I was working with our Team USA welder, and we kind of basically put everything on hold and basically knew we weren't going to be going. And we had about 5 to 6 months worth of effort put in before it got canceled. And we heard this was a possibility. And from going to Shanghai to Cleveland, Ohio, and all the background work, all the logistics and everything, the fact that Lincoln Electric pulled that off in 3 months' time, and it's going absolutely great out there. And all
it's going seamlessly out there.
We've got we originally had 32 countries coming. Unfortunately, we're down to 21 countries out there just in Skill 10. I don't know why the other countries didn't quite make it. I heard there were maybe some visa issues coming out here, but it's an amazing that they stepped forward and was willing to make that happen, because a lot of people had a lot of time invested, and everybody got to still compete.
Yeah, it's crazy, like you said, because it's kind of like the Olympics. So it's planned out years in advance. Like, 4 years ahead of time, oh, we're going to be, running skills or world skills competition here. Let's start planning the logistics. So for that to fall through, and then for Lincoln to come in and say, hey, you know what, you can do it at our facility and we'll get everything set up, everything's been a smooth transition. The hotels, the buses, the food, the competition, everything's laid out. Mm-hmm. To be able to pull that off in just a few months speaks volumes about their dedication to this type of competition.
Yeah. And that's, you said it best, the time, the money, the logistics, the buses, the visas, getting all the international countries in, all the interpreters. They've got one heck of a team behind them, and the leadership and the financing to get it done. And I mean, the amount of money spent in this building the past 3 months, I don't even want to know the number.
I'd like to see what it was, but I bet it's ridiculous.
And they didn't have to do it, right? And so that's what speaks volumes.
Well, Lincoln's always been big on education and welding training. That's one of the things I found out when I got into welding education back in 2015, because I was like a big Miller fan, back in the day when I was out doing ironwork and stuff. Everything we used was Miller. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until I got into education and started I had to run a Lincoln. That's what was at the school. Mm-hmm. And then, talking to my Lincoln rep and then coming up here and taking classes, that is like I kind of shifted gears. I was like, man, they've got a lot of passion for what they do and the products that they build. It's like very high quality. Like, I've toured their facility. I've got to watch them make stuff up here in Cleveland, attend the Instructors Institute, or the Welding Educators Workshop, and then the Advanced Educators Workshops, and then the Beyond the Booth training, going over to do, the automation tour. They're the welding experts. Their tagline says it best.
Yeah.
And this is just another example of, what they do.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to see this whole thing come together, because had Lincoln not stepped up, this competition wouldn't be taking place today.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You said it. You couldn't say it any better. When I was competing, Lincoln had stepped forward in almost every area in my competition career, between Skills USA, down at the state level, all the way up to World Skills, being a global sponsor. And I really like the support of education. That's one of my big passions, and they put their money where their mouth is and get stuff done.
Yeah.
And this week
now
definitely proves that.
What's like the structure? Because I see a lot of people have, like all the people from the different countries, they have jackets, representing their country. But they've got like expert, on the back of their jacket. I understand what the competitors are, but like, what's that whole structure, and what are these different people? What's their what are they doing here?
Okay, so the best way to explain an expert would directly translate to like an instructor or a mentor or a coach. So the U.S. Weld expert is named Ray Connolly. He was my expert when I was going through in 2017. So typically it's a two-man team. for the competition, the competitor that's doing the welding in skill 10, and their expert. So their expert's role is to make sure the competitor has everything they need, kind of coach them through everything. But there's a big part of it that a lot of people don't see, where that expert is involved in the judging and the criteria of the test plates and the stuff they're welding during these competitions. And so it's actually structured really well, where every expert gets to grade every category in front of each other. So every country has an expert. And so if they were judging, say, the USA's pressure vessel, every country is going to be basically have their hands on that vessel and grading it, holding each other accountable, making sure that everybody's measuring and judging these welds properly. And so it's a huge. I like the way they do it. We actually implement that in our weld trials. We actually have the instructors doing the grading. And when we first started doing that, there was a giant heartache over it. Like, there's no way you're having that competitor's instructor grade his stuff. That doesn't seem fair. But if you and I were sitting across from each other and we both had a competitor, we would be basically watching over each other and holding each other accountable. And it's actually very, very seamless.
You're gonna want to grade accurately so that the other person is grading accurately.
Yep. And so here at World Skills, one of the biggest barriers that they've learned to go through is the language barrier, right? So say we have 20 different languages in there, all grading off of the same criteria, same blueprints and everything. And so it's really a neat thing to watch 20 countries come together and do the same exact thing through different languages.
Yeah, and I definitely think that's the cool part, because I've met people from Belgium and Austria and Germany and France, just so far. And then United Arab Emirates. I got to eat dinner with some people last night. Brazil. It's really cool to meet people from so many different countries, like, in one area.
Yeah, and that's what's cool. From being a competitor in 2017, a lot of those faces out there are the same faces. And so we've all been through, COVID in our own ways in different countries and stuff. And it's cool to get back with everybody and reunite and touch base on those old relationships and keep in touch with each other.
Yeah, I was wondering, because, like, I figured I was speaking with one of the reps, or one of the people with skills, and I said, I figured, or I was just thinking, there would be like a line of employers out the door waiting to hire, just anybody that's competing. Because if you're at that level where you're competing on a global scale for, a trade like welding, there should be a line out the door of employers. And they were like, oh no, all these people are hired. Their government pays them to practice and to train for this competition. And, like, we were having this conversation earlier, and I was like, man, why doesn't the U.S. do that? Like, because you kind of told me your story, when you went through and you're training for 18, 19 hours a day for, a couple of years, and still, having to support yourself. Like, there was no government subsidies. The government didn't fly you over here to work with this instructor because they're, the best in this, this welding process, and then fly you over here to work with this other instructor, or fly that instructor in, or, like, put time, money, and effort into competing on the world stage for a skilled trade.
Right. And so that brings up a lot of good points. So a lot of the countries, like you said, are government funded, that have good money behind them and a lot of time, right? So some countries have time where they start competitors 5, 6, 10 years before their competition ever starts, and have them in training facilities, sending them all around the world getting ready. And the U.S., we don't have any funding from the government, which is kind of surprising. AWS has come up in a very big way they've done it for clear back since, I can't tell you exactly the time AWS stepped in, but all of it's funded by the American Welding Society through the World Skills Committee that I'm a part of. And if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be able to do any of it. But all that gets to cover is the training past the time you are selected, and that is for, travel, competition stuff. When I competed, thanks to my wife, she made it a lot more possible. She was working for Pepsi at the time, tossing big big square cubes of Pepsi all day, 12 hours a day, paying the bills while I was off chasing the dream. So shout out to her for her support. I owe her the world because of it. But some of these guys like Jordan Packer, the guy I've been training for the U.S. for the past 3 months. If you want to win and succeed, you don't have time to work in industry.
There's no way. I mean, if you're training 18, 19 hours a day, damn near 7 days a week, where are you going to find time to work a full-time job or something to support yourself? I mean, you're probably not even finding enough time to sleep.
Yeah, sleep. Jordan and I were getting ready for this competition, and we were a couple months behind because thinking that it was canceled. And we've been working together in Utah for the past 3 months, just trying to get ready. And I mean, we're pulling anywhere from 15 to 18-hour days, getting a couple hours of sleep. I was still working on the 2 businesses and being a welding instructor at the same time. But the amount of financial stress that these competitors are under, where they don't get much funding, but still want to compete, they're living. I mean, the hardest part for me as a expert or a deputy expert is to keep them focused on training, and not that they're broke and trying to live, right? Mm-hmm. And so typically we put them up in one of our houses. I had one of my businesses helping fund the hotel Jordan's staying in Utah to make sure he had somewhere to live. And anyway, with all that said, we still have medaled every year. Since clear back in the 1990s, the U.S. has always brought home a medal. And imagine what we could be if we got some more industry sponsors or government helping us and bridging that gap and helping out Team USA.
Yeah. Now, how does that work across the U.S.? Like, what's that whole structure like? So there's certain times of the year they'll do like regional Skills USA competitions, and then that regional will go to state, and then state. Like, what's that whole process? Yeah,
that's a very good question, and I'm so pumped that I'm here to be able to explain it. So it all starts with our Skills USA. It starts at the regional level in your state. You get involved with a college or a high school. It could be, secondary or post-secondary. And you compete in your region to where you get to represent your school at a state level. And if you win your state competition, you get to go to Skills USA's National Skills Conference, which was held last year in Atlanta, Georgia. So that's going to be held in Atlanta, Georgia for the next 4 years. It cycles a different city every 5 years. But what we do from there is we take everybody that gets invited from the National Skills USA Conference, and American Welding Society sends them an invite to the AWS US Open Weld Trials, where we narrow it down. We start doing what we call turn-ins, where, say, we have 30 schools, 30 individuals that accepted the invitation. We give them the technical description or the rules for the competition, the blueprints, and we tell them all the rules, help them out, and we say, we need you to submit a set of these to us via shipping, mail, and we grade it to where we can get it narrowed down to 6 in a cost-effective way without bringing 30 people to one location. Mm-hmm. And so we narrow it down to 6, and we have our top 6 weld off, where we bring 6 of them, they go head-to-head, and then
that'll be done in person.
That'll be done in person. We have a facility in the Robotics Technology Park in Huntsville, Alabama, where we have our setup that we leave set up there, and we go. This is an every other year thing. And so every 2 years, we invite a pool of students from the National Skills USA Conference. And so there has to be, I think, the age, I've heard out in the shop that the age might be voted to change, but you can't be older than 21 years of age at the year that the year you're competing at World Skills. So there's a little bit of an age restriction there, but that gets most everybody before they leave college. If you're in 1 to 2 year into your 2 to 4 year degree, you're normally right there where you need to be. But we narrow it down to 3, and then we do a tune-up where we train those 3 even further with past competitors like myself, and then the guy that wins that is the U.S. representative and gets to be a World Skills competitor.
And then I would imagine the other two are alternates, just in case something happens to,
Yep.
The choice. Now, do they train for a certain amount of time? The second and third place, do they continue training just in case something were to happen?
So typically we haven't worried about that, but knowing what we know now, we would like to at least keep number two continued in training and stay close in case something was to happen to our number one guy. I know when I was a competitor traveling around the world, a lot of the other countries always had three they were working on, and they didn't pick their three until the day they had the last day of the registration deadline. But what's cool is our World Skills Committee through AWS is all 100% made up of past World Skills competitors.
Yeah.
And I don't know anybody else that has something like that. It's so cool. Brandon Mulebrandt, chair of our committee. When did he compete? I don't know all the numbers, but
I think he was somewhere in the 90s. I remember just from the conversations last night.
In Lyon, France, and I know next year Lyon, France has the contract for 2024, and so that's going to be cool because that's going to be a full cycle where it went through all the countries that participate, and he's kind of going clear back to where he started. It's pretty neat.
Oh wow!
But yeah, we've medaled every year since the 90s. Everybody in our committees, past competition competitors, and it's such a cool thing to be a part of.
So when you say medal, you're talking like they place first, second, or third?
So there's first, second, third, and then a medallion of excellence. So it's all based off of points as far as percentages. And so say like competitors here have to score, this could come out where nobody has any medal at the worst case scenario. So they have certain percentages that they hold them up to anything above 95% across the whole board is like a silver medal, or anything above 98 is a gold. And so you could have multiple golds, multiple silvers, multiple bronzes, kind of the way they structure it. But a medallion of excellence is kind of saying that you were within, a certain percentage of the top group, and so you get a medallion of excellence. And so we consider that a medal because you get the medal at the ceremony and everything. And then there's a best in nation where every country has their team, like Team USA, where there's a best in nation where you score the highest out of the team. But so yeah, we typically are in the top three. We'll see where we end this year. I've been working pretty hard with Jordan. Like I said, for the past couple months, he's been doing really well, making a lot of progress, and we'll see how it goes.
Now, what's the competition consist of? So I seen him out there earlier. They got a bunch of coupons outside the booth. They have a bunch of prints. First are all the weld blueprints and everything, and the fit up instructions. That's all in different languages, like their home language, or do they have an interpreter with them that'll read that and then give them that information?
So the way we have it broke up is there's two sets of blueprints. They're identical. There's a ISO standard, and the other one's what would it be?
ANSI?
No.
ANSI.
ANSI. There's an ANSI and an ISO, and then I think everything's in English, and then anyone will have to interpret from there. But the way we break it up is there's 4 modules in the competition, and they have 20 hours to complete it. The first module is the most heavily scored. It's got the highest points. It's module 1, where we have all of the test plates. And the test plates consist of a 4.5-inch schedule 80 pipe test, a 3/8 groove test, and a 5/8 groove test, and 2 fillet weld brake tests with half-inch material. And so way back in the last competition, they vote on the processes that could be picked. And so there's, say, 16 options for all these coupons, changing the position, changing the root process, changing the cap process. And it's all drawn out of a hat here where it's all random.
So it's not the same thing every year. So you can't just have somebody,
Yep.
that's going to compete. He's going to compete in 6, or he or she is going to compete in 6 years from now. They can't start practicing those types of joints, positions, and processes.
Yeah, you can try pretty close. You have a list of all the possibilities, and you have to be proficient to a very high level in all of them, and just to be the best prepared. What they drew this year for the 4-inch pipe is a 6G position, GTAW for the root, and SMAW for the fill and the cap. The 10 millimeter, which is 3/8, was in the 2G position, MIG root, GMAW root, and GMAW fill and cap. The 16 millimeter, which is the 5/8 plate, came out to be the 1G position, open root with a GMAW for the root and FCAW for the fill and cap.
Okay. So are they using ever? I mean, is it even part of the thing where they're using advanced processes like RMD or STT for root applications, and then like spray or pull spray for out of position? I mean, is that a possibility? Is it pretty much short circuit and then globular?
So the good thing is that they're not limited to the advanced processes. They can use whatever they want.
Oh, okay. So they can pick.
They can pick. So as long as it falls under the right family, right? So if it's GMAW, as long as they are using a solid wire process, it could be an STT or an RMD. Since it's Lincoln, it'll be STT. And then you could use any sort of pulse transfer, short circuit. You get to use the machine to its full capabilities. And so that's really, really cool. And as Team USA, we really use that to our advantage because these processes.
Lincoln's in your backyard.
Yeah. And they've got these advanced processes running so good out of position that it'd be dumb to not utilize it, especially when these test coupons are being so. I'm trying to.
The criteria on it.
The criteria is so tight. So there's visual criteria, and then there's X-ray or destructive criteria. So they start out with the visual criteria, where it is extremely, extremely strict, where it's all in metric. We have all metric gauges and everything because we're the only ones that haven't adopted that yet. Yeah. And so, for example, say like a groove weld, like the 3/8 plate, the bead can't vary in width more than like a 0.5 millimeter. And that a 0.5 millimeter is what, 20,000ths of an inch. And so for a 10-inch coupon, you got to weld a bead that doesn't vary
more than 20,000ths of an inch.
More than 20,000ths of an inch in width, and that's not even height. And so the visual criteria is really strict that way that they can truly find the best welder out there. And when it comes to meeting criteria and stuff like that. And so after visual criteria is done, they send it to X-ray, where they classify it anywhere from an A, B, C, or a D class X-ray. And the criteria for it is so strict that it's almost impossible. Like the A classification can't have any indication of anything whatsoever measurable at all. And a lot of our filler metal specifications and flux isn't even designed to hold that tight of a tolerance for a lot of this stuff. And so the testing is really, we spend a lot of time testing. And that actually teaches you so much about the welding processes, filler metal, these different processes and stuff like that. And so yeah, they X-ray the pipe and the 2 groove joints, and then they fillet weld break test, which they break the fillet and look at the inside. A couple things they're looking for is full root fusion, clear at the bottom of the T-joint, which is actually harder to get than most people think.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'd say probably 80% of the welds out there probably don't have
fusion into
fusion
the root.
All the way at the very bottom. And
you'd be surprised till you start getting into cutting and etching and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, I'd show my students, and then had Nate and Rush from Weld Labs come in, and they were doing some, testing with flux core and short circuit and spray transfer, and say, hey, go over there and, try and put a root in. 1/4-inch plate, nothing too fancy, And then we did a bunch of cutting and etching, and I mean, you can see it's actually pretty damn difficult in a lot of applications.
Yeah. And so the first thing they're looking for is that, which is the easiest thing out of the criteria, but then they're looking for micro porosity, which is, we get in the microscopes and we look into the grains of the tears of this weld, and we look for microporosity. And that also scores it on a tier from A to D. And microporosity is almost impossible to eliminate. And so that's really fun, in the lab, training with these guys, testing all the different techniques and learning how, the weld metal works and these filler metals. It's pretty neat.
Now, the experts, do they start processing and doing the inspections like as soon as these pieces are coming out of the booth, or do they wait till, okay, everybody, all the competitors have completed the pipe, now we're going to start grading the pipe? Or is it like it's coming out of the booth one at a time and it's grading and getting scored, right then and there?
Okay, so there's a couple different ways they score. So there's in-process scoring, which we call hold points, where a competitor would be putting in like an open root in one of these groove joints, and they require them to do a stop-start in a specific area so they can test their ability to stop-start and still pass X-ray. And so there's in-process judging where they got to stop for their hold points. But as the coupons come out, they start kind of stacking them on the sides. They don't wait till everything is done. They start grading as it comes out, but they wait for a certain. So say they're going to start grading the pipe, which they actually started doing out there just before I walked in here.
Okay.
We waited till all the pipe was done, and so now we're scoring the pipe, but they're still in Module 1 welding the rest of the coupons. That way, we can get ahead of time and keep, because the scoring takes so long.
Yeah, I would imagine, because you've got, 21 experts out there, however many competitors, you've got an expert for each competitor.
Yep.
So
21 different languages.
21 different languages going through, looking at, this route and that route and everything.
And my absolute favorite part about it all is you and I were talking a little bit out there in the shop, is all these competitors have the same criteria, same blueprints, different backgrounds, different culture, different countries, different languages. We all come together, we meet the same criteria, but not a single one of those pressure vessels or test coupons are going to be the same as far as, the way they look. They all have their own techniques that that different countries, different cultures have. And so I'm really excited for you to get out there and see everybody's meeting these strict criterias with different techniques.
With their own way.
Yep.
Yeah, that's really, and I've talked about it a bunch of times on the podcast. Like, a weld is like a signature. It's like a thumbprint. Like, there's no two that are alike unless it's from the same person. I'm really interested to see the different techniques and stuff, because I was looking at the Lincoln actually has a display case out there, and you can see some of the past winners of the different World Skills competitions in there for aluminum and stainless and steel, and the different countries that placed.
Yep.
And you can tell right off the bat, like, all these welds are different, even though it was ran in the same process.
Yep, that's the funnest part for me, seeing the different signatures per se that they have with their welds, and see the different ways of going about it. That's what's really fun. And so that's Module 1, the test plates. The next one's the pressure vessel that we've mentioned a couple times. The pressure vessel is always everybody's favorite, right? Because it looks cool. There's a lot of welds on it. It's designed to test the welders in all the different kind of tie-ins, different positions. The way the pressure vessel works is it all is done in position with the base plate flat on the table, and the blueprint calls out for certain welds in certain areas, and it uses all of the major welding processes: GTAW, SMAW, FCAW, and GMAW. Did I skip one?
I don't know. Let's see. We got SMAW, GMAW, GTAW. Which one I missed one.
Man,
we got stick, TIG, MIG, flux core.
Yep, there you go.
There we go. We got self-shielded and gas shielded. Too many arc welding in there. You got self-shielded and gas shielded flux core?
No, we've just got gas shielded.
Okay, that looks cleaner anyway.
Yep. And so, the blueprint calls out what process for what weld. And what's really cool about what you learn training with these pressure vessels is the visual criteria, trying to maintain that, doing all the different tie-ins, different positions, and maintaining the strict criteria for visual and still being able to pass a pressure test. And so these pressure vessels are hydrostatically compressed with water. That way we don't have bombs going off in the shop. We fill them full of water, burp all the air out, is what we say, and get all the air out and pump it up with hydraulics. and we put it up to 1,000 psi, which the general person, 1,000, that doesn't seem too much, right? But 1,000 psi's per square inch, right?
Yeah.
And so you could have, man, I don't know, I haven't calculated one up in a long time, but say 30 square inches or 50 square inches. I mean, it adds up pretty quick. And so these pressure vessels actually bubble up like a balloon, this 3/8 plate,
Really?
during getting pressure tested. And as a welder, when you're doing these trainings, you learn so much failing pressure tests. The way tie-ins work, the way, how easy it is to get lack of fusion in between passes, how easy it is to fail these tests, and it really helps you with the rest of your welding career.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I mean, like once I learned, a lot of the different testing methods and some of the most common failures, as a welder, I started taking that into consideration and changing certain techniques.
Yeah.
And then that also changed the way that I was teaching welding, because it's like, okay, this is a common occurrence, this is a common failure. Here's why we have this discontinuity or, this failure or this indication. Here's how we correct that. Here's how we fix that. And that's one thing I would try to train the students in is, and then making the repairs, understanding what's causing this and then how to repair it. Because I don't care who you are. If you've been in the welding industry for long enough, like you've put in a shitty weld.
Yeah.
You've busted out on a test. How do you fix that?
Yeah, and it doesn't really take that shitty of a weld to fail, some of these tests, right? And
Especially with what they're doing out there in the lab.
yeah, especially that. Yeah, I mean, it really opened up my eyes to how easy and how often there's lack of fusion in a lot of these welding processes, even advanced processes. But after doing all that testing, you won't see me with a regular CV short arc MIG on very much thick plate. After when I was starting, I think the biggest issue the welding industry has is some downhill GMAW CV over some nice good mill scale, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just proving that concept to my students while I'm teaching, lack of fusion, mill scale, what different processes are designed for, and how they've started to be used improperly or out of what they were designed for, and how catastrophic it could be, right?
Yeah. And a lot of people say, oh, yeah, you just burn that stuff out. Crank it up 5 amps, you'll burn it out. And it's like, no, it messes with, right at the welding process. If you can tell the difference. You take the mill scale off, you're going to get great puddle fluidity. And don't get me wrong. I mean, there's certain, like 70S6 wire, it's good for like light to medium mill scale. But if you got heavy mill scale on there, like hot rolled material, you're really not punching in. You're not getting fusion. You're not getting past because of that mill scales there. So do yourself a favor, take a grinder, clean it up.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I noticed. Once everybody, because you got like a bird's eye view of this competition because the way the Lincoln Welding School is laid out, everybody was in there cleaning and prepping before they did any tacking or anything like that. They found out where the weld's going to go, and they started cleaning and prepping before, they started fitting this stuff together.
Yeah. Yep. Preparation is one of the most important things, right? And so the tolerances that we were discussing earlier about anywhere from a 0.5 millimeter to 1 millimeter, that could be off of tolerance before they even tack it up. By the way, if they grind it wrong, or if the metal supplier doesn't take care of the bevel the way they should. I mean, all these bevels in here, all this material I supplied, and it's all been machined on a mill. Really, really precise stuff. That way, the material's within tolerance before they even get it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there's so much to learn there with that pressure vessel. I believe that's almost one of the most important things I learned as a welder was failing those pressure tests and why. Different restarts, tie-ins, multi-pass welds, preparation in between. I grew up in a big, kind of an oil and gas, oil-filled mentality, like you were saying, burn it out,
Yeah.
Run
Turn
it
me
out,
up 5.
turn it up 5, and I started realizing how much of that doesn't get burned out, almost none of it.
Yeah, it's funny when you start, and nobody realizes that. And it's not until, because not a lot of people go through and actually do the destructive testing to see what's on the inside. You lay down a good bead, and you're like, man, that looks good. It must be a good weld because it looks good. And then they do some visual testing on there. I mean, if they don't bust out like RT or, dye penetrant or mag particle, you have no idea.
Yeah.
It looks good. On to the next one.
Yeah. And so that, leads to me encouraging anybody out there to start cutting open these welds, breaking them over, bending them over,
All right, we're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break. This segment of the Arc Junkies podcast is brought to you by Strong Hand Tools. And right now through the end of the year, you can get 10% off plus free shipping and a free clamp-on work light when you order my favorite table from Strong Hand Tools, the Rhino Cart. This thing is a beast and has been a great addition to my shop to fix your custom parts. Don't miss this great deal. Head on over to stronghandtools.com/promo today. We're also brought to you by Everlast Welders, the perfect machine to start your small business. Everlast has machines for every skill level and budget, and all IGBT inverters come with a 5-year warranty. Whether you need a single process machine, a multi-process machine, or even a plasma cutter, Everlast has you covered. And you can pick yours up today for a fraction of the price that comes with a better warranty than some of the other brands that are on the market. Check out their full line of machines today at everlastwelders.com. Everlast Welders. Weld mean, weld green. We're also brought to you by O2 Armor, a concealed nasal filtration system that filters out particulate matter down to 2.5 micron. I use O2 Armor on a regular basis, especially while I'm doing customer visits in shops with less than ideal air quality. O2 Armor allows me to block out all the airborne particulates like dust, fumes, and other potential hazards. 90% of your daily breathing occurs through your nose, so nasal filtration just makes sense. Check them out today and save 10% when you use Arc Junkies 10 at checkout when you go to o2armor.com. Now let's get back to the show. Yeah, Nate and I talked about that. It doesn't take much. I mean, you can pick up a bottle of navel jelly from Home Depot for like $14 and it's going to last you 10 years.
Yep.
And like a little portaband, you make, do a fillet weld, cut it apart, polish it up a little bit, throw a little bit of navel jelly on there, wait 20 minutes, wipe it off, and then you'll be able to see, whether you punched into that sidewall or not, whether you got, fusion into the root. Mm-hmm. Same thing with a groove weld, whether it's an open root or, just a single V. Yep. With backing, you cut that thing apart and, same thing, polish it up, put some navel jelly on there. Or, if you're in a school application, we always use like 5% nitol. Mm-hmm. Certain places you're going to have to show like a CWI, your ID card to buy that stuff. I know I did for buying certain acids and stuff for different etchings. Because there's some other stuff you can do with it. But yeah, if you're just etching the material, it's relatively cheap. It's like $40, and like again, that stuff's gonna last you a while, depending on how many coupons you're doing. Yeah. But I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibilities for your average person that's starting to get into welding to start doing some destructive testing, and then a fillet weld break test. That's virtually, if you can fix it to the table, whether you tack weld it to the table or whatever, you get a big enough crescent wrench and you only weld it on one side, you're gonna be able to break it. Yeah.
And what we like to do is, a cheap option for those fillet weld break tests is after your visual, you're done looking at the crown of the weld, you can take a cut disc and just do a light notch, right down the middle of it. And that helps it break clean, and the same all the way across. And if, most shops have, the hydraulic press that you see in a lot of mechanic shops, and we just tip that thing over and give it some pressure, and it doesn't take much to break them.
No.
And I highly encourage a lot of that testing because it's the expensive part's already done. You've already welded it. Let's see how good we did, right? And you're going to start learning a lot about technique and processes, and it gets to the point where when you need to, if I have to weld test tomorrow, and it's a code I haven't practiced or a test I haven't practiced, I don't worry about it anymore. I can just go past the test because I have perfected the idea of these tests and why welds fail, the different discontinuities, where they come from, and how to avoid them, right? And so it really helps you with your welding career, and it helps you get the confidence, because the best way to succeed is to learn all the ways to fail, right? Mm-hmm. And go ahead and start cutting those things open.
Yeah, you're gonna learn a lot more. I've said it a bunch of times. You're gonna learn a lot more through failure than you will from your successes. You're gonna learn exactly what not to do. You already know. You got a general idea of what you're supposed to do, but learning what not to do, learning what things to avoid.
Yep. And one of the cool things when Jordan and I was training this past couple months was we started pressure testing his pressure vessels with only the root passes in. That way we knew...
You knew the root was good.
That his root processes are good and that vessel's sealed before he ever caps it. That way, if it's unreal how easy it is to get get a little bit of lack of fusion. And once those plates start flexing and tearing, it only takes a little bit, and it turns into a sprinkler from there. But doing stuff like that, pressure testing vessels with only the roots in, teaches you the concept of root passes right in the bottom of those grooves. And when I'm training these competitors, or even when I was doing it myself, I hated my welding instructor when he'd say it. He's like, I hope you fell. You were pressure testing. I hope it leaks. And when I was a competitor, I didn't realize why, and it would piss you off.
Man, what a dick.
Yeah, I was like, whose team he on?
Yeah, right.
And anyway, no, and shout out to Mason Winters. I have everything competition wise between him and Kevin Mitchell. They definitely pushed me beyond my boundaries. But I said the same thing to Jordan. I says, if we're going to fail a pressure test, we need to figure out every way we can and fix those problem areas. And a lot of it's the smaller weld size fillet welds on these pressure vessels around pipes and stuff. That is a smaller weld size where you can't do multi-pass, and you can only do a single pass weld out of position where
you're really relying on that root.
Yep, you're relying on the root. Well, a lot of them, it's so small you don't get a root. You get one pass, and you have one opportunity to pass that test. And we learn, we're allowed 15 millimeter TIG tacks, no tacks longer than 15 millimeters. And we develop these processes or techniques where we're never stopping or starting on somewhere that there's not a tack. That way, when we stop to reposition around a pipe, we do a stop-start on a 15 millimeter TIG tack, knowing if we have a little bit of lack of fusion in the bottom of that stop-start, then it's covered by that TIG tack.
Okay.
So there's a lot of little stuff like that, and that's really fun for the pressure vessel. So.
Yeah, I noticed they're able to use power tools in there as well. I was watching one of the competitors earlier. He had like an end grinder with a burr bit on there, kind of feathering out his stop and start when he was doing the pipe.
Yep.
So, yeah, I guess you can pretty much bring whatever tools you want to the competition within reason.
Yep, that's what's cool. Is it's basically judging your capabilities to be able to do the job we're asking them to do, right? So there's rules and regulations, obviously, for certain stuff like guides and chill plates and stuff that gives them an advantage in the process. But end grinders, die grinders with burr bits, like you said, stuff like that. That's all acceptable. And a lot of these guys, use. See some competitors out there that have these really big, nice, high definition, lights that blind you every time you walk past the booth.
Oh yeah, this is one dude's got one hanging up in the booth. I walked by, I was like, damn, he's not even welding in there. It's like it's bright through the curtain.
I don't think I looked at it for the past 2 hours, and I can still see it when I blink.
Yeah.
But anyway, he's got his booth lit up like a UFO, man. But it helps him because he can see everything he needs to see, and stuff like that is
That's the worst part about most shops and most schools is the lighting.
Yeah.
The lighting always sucks.
I spent most of my competition career with the little pocket flashlights like the one I've got here. I'd wrap electrical tape around it so I could put it in my mouth. And anyway, so my hands were free. But yeah, these weld booths are like dungeons. It's dark. But
yeah, that seems to be the case all over the place. So once they do the pressure vessel, you got all those different processes and stuff on there. They do a visual, and then they do a pressure test, and then that pretty much concludes Module 2, right?
Yep. Module 2 is done, and then we are on to Module 3. That is the aluminum sheet metal. So the aluminum sheet metal the sheet metal projects are really the visual criteria is even deeper. But what the aluminum sheet metal project is this widget that has all the different tie-ins, positions, stuff that's engineered to test your ability to tie multiple welds together and stuff like that. So with the aluminum, there's a lot more restrictions. You can grind and prep your material before you tack it up, cleaning the edges, getting burrs off, stuff like that, hand brushing, stuff like that. But after it's tacked up, there's no post-weld cleaning, so you can't brush your welds after they're done.
So if you contaminate and you get that naughty black spot there,
yeah, so
you can't wire brush that off.
Those nice, pretty black spots that I know a lot of you guys are experiencing, you don't get to hide those, and so we call those touchdowns. and it's kind of classified almost as an arc strike in a way.
Mhm.
And so we call those touchdowns, and the reason why there's no post cleaning is because of that. It's 10 gauge material. Well, no, it's not 10 gauge. It's actually .125 here in the U.S. It's 1/8 inch. Aluminum 50-52, and the filler wires 53-56 or 40-43. You get to choose.
Oh, you get to choose?
Yep.
Nice.
And so one of the main objectives is full penetration. So you have these butt joints and corner joints that you have to get full penetration through all of them in all these different positions. But then you have the fillet welds that you're not allowed to have any burn through. And so it requires you to weld on a aluminum box that would fit within like a 1 foot by 1 foot cube for 2 hours solid, getting full penetration on aluminum. What do you think that project's doing?
And it's timed.
It's timed. It's getting really hot.
Smoking hot.
Smoking hot, right? And everything here is timed, and so they don't have time to really cool it off unless you're really fortunate and are ahead of the clock, which is normally not the case. And so you learn a ton in those with heat management, stuff like that, techniques for burn through, using different arc characteristics between your frequency and your balance, and different tungsten angle grinds, stuff like that, to help you get that full penetration as much as possible. And for anyone out there that's done a lot of like butt joints with aluminum sheet metal, when you burn through, those oxide layers kind of form a purge around it, in a way. And so there's also where it turns out to be what we call butt cheeking, right? Where the oxides keep that puddle from fusing. And so that's considered lack of fusion. And so you have all these joints that equal out to over 100 inches. Every single one of these projects have more than 100 inches in them if you calculate each weld joint. And so to get that aluminum to completely fuse on the burn through without a back purge, 100% all the way around, is a very big task in itself, and you start learning a lot through that process.
What's the secret to that? Because now I'm curious.
So there's a couple secrets. The biggest thing is really tight and clean fit up. One of the things that is really, really big when you start your puddle and you start adding your filler wire, that first dab of filler wire is what bridges those two oxide layers between the two plates together to where it's no longer butt cheeking. If you miss that first dab and you don't push that wire in there enough to bridge that gap,
you miss it the whole way down.
You miss it the whole way down. And so we have techniques to make these plates extremely tight between doing multiple tacks in the same spot over and over again to get the material to shrink and get that fit up perfect and tight to where there's no gap or no area for oxygen to get in between those plates to keep those oxide layers from forming together. And so there's a couple different things that we do like that. A lot of it's technique and prep.
Now, is the backside of that, I guess that box or that piece, that widget that you're welding, is it exposed on the backside so you can get in there and get a really good look at all of the full pen through there?
Yep.
Okay, I was wondering, it's either that or you'd have to drill a hole and bore scope it, or...
Yeah, so they typically leave the back end of the project open for the judges to inspect on the inside and for the competitors to see what's going on. There has been areas in the past where there's certain welds you can't see very good, and if it's too big of a pain in the butt, it's sad to see, but they take these projects and they put them in a big bandsaw, cut them in half, and lay them in two pieces. That way that you can...
Everything's exposed.
Yep, everything's exposed.
And they're not cutting over a weld, so they're not doing you any favors.
Yeah. There's a couple times I wish they would cut in certain places, but it never worked out that way.
So that's all visual on that one.
Yep.
And then they go on to module 4, which is, I'm assuming, stainless.
Yep. So stainless is the exact same.
Just a different alloy.
Different alloy. It's a 304L, and we are allowed a back purge.
Yeah,
so,
I was gonna ask if if it's open, how are you keeping it from sugaring on the inside?
Yeah, so that we are allowed a back purge, which makes it a lot funner. right? And then we get into the science of purging and these little intricate widgets that they have hold a lot of oxygen in certain places, and so you learn a lot about purging and getting all that oxygen out of there. But it's all about penetration, bead width, and consistency on the sheet metal projects, and it really pushes you as a welder for sure.
Yeah, I would imagine that whole competition, all 4 modules is going to push you to your limits.
Yeah. And between the 4 modules, right, we've gone through on-site, on-demand weld tests that is drawn out of a hat that is tested in every way. Got a pressure test that tests a lot of your lack of fusion and visual. And then you've got the sheet metal that teaches you a lot about heat management, distortion, penetration, purging. And so by the time you're done with this throughout a whole competition career, you've mastered some of the very key aspects of a lot of the industry. And so you've held it to a standard that's way higher than any of our regular codes, to where even yourself on the worst day is acceptable to some of our highest codes.
Mm-hmm.
So the welders that are coming out of here are really, really good welders. And earlier I remember you talking about, like, well, why isn't industry lined up at the door, right? And I don't know why. I think as a country we could get a lot better at letting people know that this is even happening, right? The fact that I'm on this podcast with you is a huge deal, and every year more and more people hear about it, but our country doesn't broadcast it like it should. And I think that's, a big problem why we have the skills gap that we have. And I mean, we haven't been pushing these skilled trades, this world skill stuff just as big as the Olympics.
Yeah.
But nobody.
It's the Olympic for skilled trades, because it's not just welding too. I mean, you got block masons, carpenter. I mean, obviously at, World Skills, if it would have taken place in Shanghai, you've got all these different trades. You got culinary, cosmetology, like all this different stuff. It's not just welding. Welding's just one aspect of it. That's one of the reasons it's being able to do this over here at Lincoln, because they can facilitate that.
Mm-hmm.
But, are the other trades doing that?
So as a whole, as a country, we have honestly one of the smallest teams. We normally only have anywhere from 3 to 6 people that go, which could be a lot higher. Some of these teams have a competitor in every competition, but a lot of it comes down to funding, and it's hard to get funded for something that nobody knows about. Right?
Yeah, I heard over in Brazil they actually have mobile trailers that they'll roll in there, and they can train 20 welders at a time.
Yeah. So a lot of the competitors that we're competing against this week have been training in their own training facility with hired help, keeping coupons in front of them, doing their testing for them, cooking their meals, and it's
reading them bedtime stories like the whole night, doing their laundry and all that.
Tuck them in, everything, and it is a very big deal. But here in the U.S., we haven't. There's nothing, and so when I was a competitor, there's always, industry's brutal, right? They're like, it's a competition welder, all this hype. They normally say some mean things on social media to make themselves feel a little better.
Mm-hmm. You got to.
Whatever you got to do. But these guys have truly mastered most of the most important things it takes to be a good welder. They are going into industry when this is done. Accept them. Bring them on, put them under your wing, hire them. They're good welders. They have a great start.
I mean, just like the work ethics behind, hey, I want you to go compete, not for a job, not for a cash prize. I just want you to compete for, just to see where you stack up in the world. And I want you to train for, 2 to 3 years for, 10, 15 hours a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the dedication to work ethics and just being there and learning all this stuff, you would think, companies would put a premium on there and be like, I want that person as the welding instructor for our school, or I want that person to be building our cranes, or I want that person to be in charge of, all the bridges and everything that we're going to fabricate and build, or, I want that person in charge of our structural steel shop.
Yep. I can tell you one thing that every competitor has out there is one hell of a work ethic. And that's something that is hard to find nowadays, to be honest. And for my businesses back in Utah, I'm going to offer every single one of these guys a job, no matter where they're from or what language they speak, because I know what quality they have and the drive and the dedication it takes to get this far.
Yeah.
And whoever comes here first and starts hiring these guys is going to be walking into the honey hole.
Yeah, it's not a bad gig at all, man.
Yeah.
So in addition to like the welding aspect of it, there's a whole nother competition in related to welding, and that's the fabrication, or what do they call that? The construction
Metalwork is what it's called.
Also known as fabrication.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
they really like the big titles.
Yeah. And so Skills USA, we have welding competitions all the way up. Fabrication competitions all the way up to nationals. And it's a 3-man team. It's all about reading a blueprint, building something within the tolerance they give you in a certain amount of time with certain processes. And Team USA has never had a competitor in Skills 42, which is construction metalwork. These guys out here are awesome. You've seen them out there. They've got awesome tools, gauges.
Oh, yeah. Like I walked out there just like before the competition. I haven't been back there since the competition started, but they've like dial calipers and micrometers and everything. Like this is like high precision fabrication.
Yep.
They're not out there with tape measures. They got scales and calipers.
Yeah. With, the granite blocks with the vertical calipers that they use as scribes for their measurements. Each competitor calibrates their press brake, their shears, their plasma cutters. It is all about precision. They go anywhere from CNC design to putting it on these machines, calibrating these machines, and going clear back to the basics too, where a lot of this stuff is required to have a hand cut oxyfuel cut, and these cuts these guys are doing are unreal. And so there's a lot of pride and training, just as much training and pride that goes into Skills 42. And they still have to do the welding side too. They're judged on their welds. They have every process on the piece that they're building. And those guys are true professionals in fabrication.
And we've never had anybody from the USA compete in that division.
Not one. We don't have the funding to do it.
That blows my mind.
Yeah, we need to get there.
That's one area, like I've said it before, like you definitely need some government oversight on some things. And I think, with skilled trades education, that'd be one place they could start to help to subsidize that income. Welding, well, you just found out recently. You own a couple businesses, but you're a new welding instructor. We're obviously not doing it for the pay. Yeah. But I think if the government stepped in and said, okay, you're a welding instructor, the school that you're working at you're making $40,000 a year. Okay, if you were to do that job for, the same amount of hours out in industry, you'd be paid $80,000. Here's a $40,000 a year subsidy. And here's what you need to do to be able to justify that. You can't just be there for a paycheck. You can't try to teach from your office. You can't be on your phone all the time. You can't be playing hide and seek with your students, because there's a lot of instructors that do that. The instructors can't ever find the students can't ever find their instructor. Like, you need to be there and, like performance-based. Yep. And have subsidies built into that. You're continuing education, boom. We'll cover costs to send you to, CWI school, or, learn this new plasma cutting system, or, here's grants. You think about it, that's the future of America's workforce is what's at stake here.
Yep.
And it's not just welding, all the different skill trades, CDL, construction, carpentry, masonry, electrical, plumbing, all this stuff.
Yeah. This country's in trouble when it comes to hands-on. You want to
talk about build back better, and like we're losing all of these old-time fabricators and all these old-time like welders and stuff. Like, I remember when I got into education, average age of a welder was 55. Well, now I think it's somewhere in the mid 40s. And in a couple of years, like it's going to be in the mid 30s. Like, because all these people are retiring. The workforce is getting younger, but we still don't have enough people to put into the workforce.
Yep.
So we're already handicapped, and we have a group of people that just don't have the on-site experience to do this stuff because, they were trained in a school, barely got any training, and now they get put out in the industry.
Yeah.
And they're expected to know all this stuff. And the people that are there to teach them, they're on their way out the door. They're all retiring. Where are you going to learn this information at? Yeah. That's why there's such a big push for automation right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know one business that's not hiring, regardless of what trade it is. And it's such a high demand, and it's something, like you said, we're losing very quickly. And that's why I value Skills USA. Lincoln Electric, the American Welding Society, for doing what they're doing right now, because they are definitely putting a dent in it. And for guys like me, I don't know where I'd be right now if it wasn't for welding and Skills USA and the drive of what my instructors, having good instructors, did for me.
Mm-hmm.
If you put me in that same spot 8 years ago with a shitty welding instructor, I don't know where I'd be. And that's why, right now I've got two businesses that I'm running and took on a 12-month full-time welding instructor position. It wasn't for the pay, it wasn't.
Damn sure isn't.
I didn't have the time for it. But what I do have is the passion for teaching this younger generation and getting them in a very, high demand job that's going to pay them really well for the rest of their life. And yeah, I've seen my welding business in Utah, its growth being stunted by not being able to find qualified help. I'm into a point where I have to quit bidding jobs or quit getting more work because I can't find the help. And so it's like, well, if I can't find any welders, it's time to go make some.
Yeah.
And give back to the community and get in there and help these future generations.
How long you been teaching?
So I've been teaching globally for Lincoln Electric, kind of doing some consulting work for them. I've doing a little bit of teaching for my business, Welder Made, but I just barely signed on this. I'm almost through my first trimester as a welding instructor at UB Tech in my hometown.
You're gonna love it, man. I got to check back in with you next year.
Yeah,
and see how the welding program's going.
Yeah. So what I can tell you right now, just being a trimester in, is it's probably one of the most rewarding things I could ever do. Seeing the things, seeing the improvement in the students, seeing them grow as individuals, and supplying them with a skill that nobody will be able to take away from them, and they'll be able to make a living for their family for the rest of their lives.
The progress is the best part. The funny thing is I had my students for like 40 weeks when I would have them, and it's funny because like our school, as part of the onboarding process, everybody gets their photo taken on day one.
Mm-hmm.
And then like when I start doing the weld qualifications at the end of the class, I start posting their photos, and it's like, damn, 40 weeks ago, you look like babies. And now, you look like, young men and women.
Yep.
And it's funny to watch that progression, because it's not just in their welding skills, it's in like their personality, their growth as an individual, the team building, the camaraderie, the physical growth. It's really cool to watch that whole process. And then, they graduate, they walk out the door, and then boom, you hit that reset button and you get a whole new group, that comes in, then, a couple days later, and you get to start that process all over again.
Yeah. I'm excited for it. I think the fastest way to fix this problem our country has is getting them bad instructors out and getting guys like you and me in and getting these students, these young adults whatever, where they need to be. You know?
You got to, but therein lies another problem, because you got to incentivize these instructors to walk away from a good, high-paying job and then walk into, teaching.
Yeah.
Because, there's a huge pay cut. You go from like a really decent living to like borderline poverty just because it's an awesome thing to do. And it's very, rewarding to do that. It's just not financially advisable for somebody to walk away from that kind of money that they're making.
Yeah. These guys like me and yourself, to be an instructor, we want to do it, but you're sacrificing a lot to be there. And until you actually make that sacrifice for yourself, it's hard to understand how much of a sacrifice it is. But the first thing, if you want qualified help, pay qualified pay.
Yeah.
Right. If you keep paying these welding instructors $30,000-$40,000 a year, you're going to get what you pay for. Right. And so first off, fixing that would help, and get rid of these guys that aren't taking it serious and just in there for a paycheck. And
you think about it, you've got like people that come out of school, like college classes. They got their master's, they got a doctorate degree. They walk into a university, they're already making $60,000, $70,000. You take somebody that actually has hands-on skilled experience for the past 8, 10, 12 years, and you're starting them off, oh, well, we'll put you in at 35, 40K. No. You're taking somebody that only understands theory and you're, putting them in 80K.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got somebody that actually has done the work and you're giving them half that amount.
Yeah, it's kind of backwards.
And then what are these people with degrees? What are they? And I'm not knocking anybody with a degree because we need people with doctors and masters and all that. But what are they producing?
Yeah.
They're producing, a lot of people that come out and they don't have a workforce to enter. Whereas, welding instructors, they're putting people out there that, have to go to work to rebuild infrastructure, to keep up with supply and demand, to keep, if you, case in point, look at, the pandemic that we all just went through. Every welder that I know was working.
Mm-hmm.
They were all out there because they were considered essential workers.
Yep.
And they were out there, still on their tools, getting the job done to keep, things up and running as best they could, given the current circumstances.
Yeah.
They're valued. They're needed.
Yeah. That's what recently taking this position at the tech school that I'm at. It's really became clear how good of an option it is for a lot of people where, you're not in there for 4 years. You're not in there for 2, most likely, just depending on where you're at, what you're doing, where you're trying to go. So say a student is graduating high school and goes and gets a 4-year degree with college, most likely coming out with college debt. And I don't know what they're making. It depends on what they're doing. But you can go to a tech school and learn a hands-on trade. And, what are these programs typically? 700, 900-hour programs at the largest, and get a good basis in the ground to go get an entry-level job in a very honest, hardworking, reliable trade for the rest of their life, debt-free, and within a year, 2 years at the most. And there's a lot of people out there that have a hard time with school, like I did. I was a very hands-on learner, and when it came to English class and stuff like that, it was very hard for me to get. I tried hard to understand a lot of that stuff, but it wasn't clicking with me.
Yeah, it never made sense.
And the second I got into hands-on trades and started working with my hands and learning with my hands,
it makes sense. And
then I could start referencing English and math with these, real life scenarios. Math was hard for me. English was hard for me until I found my passion for welding. And then any math equation, I could put it into a welding scenario and be able to figure it out.
Mm-hmm. I put a post on LinkedIn a while back. It's like welding's taught me the science and the chemistry that my science teacher couldn't teach me. It's taught me the math that my math teacher couldn't teach me. It's taught me the art that my art teacher couldn't teach me because it's all hands-on.
Yep.
Now it's relevant. If I can put my hands on it, it makes sense. If I have to read it in a book and apply a theory, it doesn't make sense. I can't make it relative.
Yep.
I got to get my hands on it. I got to see it. I got to feel it. I got to touch it.
Yep. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
It's not hard to get into. It's not expensive to get into, and it's high demand.
You got a tool addiction like I do. It gets pretty expensive.
Yeah, that could be expensive for sure.
Yeah.
There's
just
always
dial it back. You only buy what you need when you need it.
There's always tools I'm wanting to buy. That's for sure. But yeah, I was kind of sitting back during this event. I had a VIP pass for dinner last night after the opening ceremony, and I started getting on a bus outside this Lincoln Weld School, and I'm sitting on this bus. Chris Mapes, the CEO of Lincoln Electric, walks in. The CEO of Skills USA walks in the bus. The CEO of World Skills walks onto the bus. And all these high-ups and all these big companies, American Welding Society, and these big companies, the net worth on that bus would be in, I don't even know how to put a number to it. And I'm sitting here driving down this road going to this nice dinner they had planned for us. And I'm sitting here thinking of all the places that welding has taken me. I'm only 24 years old, barely. And I've been in almost every country welding. I know the CEO of these big companies personally. I own successful businesses. I teach at schools. I work with students. And I'm just, I kind of had this time warp on this bus ride last night where it's like, holy smokes, it's only been 7-8 years since I struck my first welding arc, and I've already been around the world and met all these amazing people.
Yeah, you got 20 years worth of experience wrapped up in those 7 years.
Yeah. And that's what's really cool about the stuff we're doing here this week is connecting industry with these young men and women that are eager to get out there and make the world a better place.
Yeah, I'm glad I got to invite it up here to come and see this because it's pretty cool. I've never seen a World Skills event, and I don't think I would have the opportunity had it not been for it coming over here to stateside to Cleveland. I couldn't picture packing up my porta potty, my podcast gear and everything, and flying out to Shanghai. But because it's in Cleveland, I get to come here and see it and watch it, and it's really something to come and see and come and watch. The level of craftsmanship these people at these young men and women at 21 years and younger are putting out.
Yeah, I'm really grateful you're here. So the fact that you're here, the fact that Lincoln pulled through and did what they did to make it happen here will jumpstart what we're doing here in the United States.
I hope so, man.
I guarantee it. And it's guys like you that get the word out, and I appreciate you letting me be on here. Oh,
anytime, man. I mean, we were having a conversation very similar to this morning. I'm like, damn, I wish I would have brought my gear out in the lab, but I was like, once everything dies down a little bit, I'll go in there and snag them. But yeah, I got a couple more sessions planned. It's just really cool to be a part of this whole thing, and I'm glad I can kind of put the word out and let people know because I do have a lot of student listeners. So if Skills USA is something that your school participates in, jump out there and try it out.
Absolutely.
The worst thing that could happen is you learn some new stuff.
Yep.
That you put in a little bit more work than your fellow classmates. That's the worst case scenario. Is you put in a little bit more time and a little bit more effort, and you get a lot more out of it.
Yep, it would not be a waste of time.
No.
The only thing that's going to come out of it's growth, right? One way or another. I've seen people grow as welders, as woodworkers, but no matter what competition they're in, they do grow as a human. Mm-hmm. They develop work ethics. They learn certain things about themselves. They learn what they do. What I learned is how I handle pressure, how I handle stress, how I handle time, how I handle my resources. And you learn a lot no matter what. So I'm really excited to get you out there. Now some of them test coupons are coming out and show you some of the high-end work they've got going out there. You'll be impressed.
Yeah, man, let's go check it out.
Let's
appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing your story and kind of getting an inside look at World Skills. Once again, it's been a pleasure, man.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you.
Good luck on your teaching.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning into this week's episode. I hope you all enjoyed it. Be sure to tune in every Monday for a new episode of the ARC Junkies podcast, the first Wednesday of every month for Weld Wednesdays with AWS. Hope you all have a great rest of your week. Stay safe out there, and until next time, make every weld better than your last.